You are dying from the inside out, and the very logic you pride yourself on is the murder weapon. You have been locked in an invisible intellectual prison by history's greatest philosopher. Here is the terrifying, brutal antidote to resurrect your raw power if you dare to finish this. Have you ever felt the urge to scream, not from physical pain, but from the suffocating, invisible straitjacket of having to make sense? I am not talking about the tiredness of a long workday. I am talking about a rotting of the spirit, that bone-deep, quiet terror that creeps in when you realize your entire life has been a performance for a jury that does not care about you. You are exhausted. I see it in you because it almost destroyed me. We are bleeding out slowly, drop by drop, on the cold altar of rationality, sacrificing our very instinct to breathe, just to prove to the world that our existence is logically justified. Myth Eryndor welcomes you to a confession that might shatter everything you thought made you an intelligent adult. If you find a piece of your own hidden rebellion in these words, I strongly urge you to subscribe to the channel, as your support is the fire that fuels our journey into the deepest, darkest corners of human philosophy to bring you more profound truths in the future. Listen to me, because what I am sharing is the autopsy of my former self. For decades, I was the quintessential modern intellectual. I was infected with the belief that logic was the highest peak of human evolution. I worshipped at the temple of reason with a fanatical, blinding fervor. I truly believed that if I could just articulate my points flawlessly, if I could forge an airtight argument, and master the surgical art of debate, I could somehow amputate the chaotic messiness of the human condition. I treated every disagreement as a mathematical equation to be balanced. Socrates was my undisputed saint. The debate podium was my holy sanctuary. I lived under the tragic delusion that absolute truth was a fragile butterfly I could pin down under the glass of perfectly arranged syllables. But let me ask you to look honestly at the wreckage of your own days. How many years of your fleeting, precious life have been squandered in the toxic battlegrounds of internet comment sections? How many hours have bled away in the sterile, airless conference rooms of corporate America, or even on your own couch, engaging in a desperate, soul-crushing dance to simply prove you are right? How many times have you felt a raw, instinctual urge, a primal desire, an absolute boundary, a sudden violent spark of passion, only to immediately suffocate it, choke it to death, because you could not find the logical vocabulary to defend it to a phantom audience? We have been ruthlessly conditioned to wear this constant need to rationalize as a crown of high intelligence. We polish our objectivity and pride ourselves on being level-headed. But what if I told you that this obsession is not wisdom, it is a symptom of a profound terminal sickness? The agonizing truth, the realization that violently shattered the very foundation of my reality, is that the compulsive need to make sense to others is an act of absolute cowardice. It is pure submission. We rationalize because we are utterly terrified of our own raw, animalistic nature. We argue because we are too afraid to simply exist in our own power. Recognizing this feels like ripping the curtain off the machinery of our minds, only to find a frail, trembling creature pulling the levers in the dark. To cure this terminal paralysis of the spirit, we must swallow a jagged, bitter poison that acts as a cure. We must turn our gaze to a man who took a sledgehammer to the very pillars of Western thought, Friedrich Nietzsche. He did not offer polite academic suggestions. He offered a dark, terrifying, yet intoxicatingly liberating antidote to the venom of hyper-rationality. He dared to scream that our worship of logic was the greatest tragedy to ever poison human vitality. And to understand why we are dying from the inside out, we must travel back to the birthplace of this infection. We must stare into the eyes of the man who poisoned us all. staring across the millennia, the face we find, smiling back with a frustrating, triumphant smirk, belongs to a man revered as a demigod of philosophy, Socrates. For the longest time I hung his metaphorical portrait on the walls of my mind, viewing him as the ultimate martyr for truth. But Nietzsche ripped that portrait down and set it on fire, revealing Socrates not as a savior but as the architect of our deepest sickness. Before Socrates, the ancient Greeks lived in a magnificent, terrifying harmony with existence. They embraced the Dionysian chaos of life, the passion, the tragedy, the unspoken instincts that require no justification. They did not need to explain their greatness, they simply embodied it. Their nobility was found in action, in creation, in the raw, unapologetic assertion of their own will. Then came Socrates, a man of the lower classes, armed with a weapon that would eventually bring the noble world to its knees, the dialectic. Nietzsche saw Socrates as a symptom of decay, a man who possessed a pathological hatred for instinct. Socrates introduced a toxic equation that has haunted us ever since reason equals virtue and virtue equals happiness. He convinced the world that nothing had value unless it could be explained, debated, and logically defended. Imagine the insidious nature of this shift. Suddenly, the warrior, the poet, and the lover were made to feel inferior to the critical thinker. If you could not articulate the exact logical premise of your desire was deemed invalid. Socrates turned life from a vibrant, tragic masterpiece to be experienced into a dry mathematical problem to be solved. I feel a profound aching betrayal when I realize how deeply I internalize this Socratic lie. I spent my life believing that my emotions were chaotic beasts that needed to be tamed by the whip of the intellect. I sat in rooms with people I loved, silently dissecting their words for logical fallacies, instead of simply feeling the warmth of their presence. Socrates taught us to be suspicious of our own bodies, our own sudden inspirations, our own anger, and our own joy. He demanded that we become detached observers of our own lives, sitting in the audience with a notepad while our true selves slowly starved to death on stage. This obsession with dialectics became a weapon of the weak, a way for those who lacked natural vitality to paralyze the strong by demanding a rational explanation for everything. We surrendered our wildness to the tyranny of the why. This Socratic curse did not die in the ancient world. It mutated, creeping through the centuries until it became the invisible, suffocating air we breathe today. Look around at the world we have built upon this foundation of extreme rationality, and you will see a landscape that is technologically miraculous but spiritually desolate. We are living out the nightmare of what Nietzsche called the last man creatures who have traded the dangerous, thrilling peaks of human greatness for the warm, anesthetized comfort of absolute certainty. We have optimized everything and felt nothing. We measure our worth in productivity metrics, we intellectualize our trauma into clinical vocabulary to avoid the terrifying act of actually grieving, and we swipe through potential romantic partners as if we are auditing a corporate spreadsheet. Every single aspect of modern existence is dragging us into a sterile courtroom where we must endlessly justify our right to take up space. I remember standing in the middle of a crowded room, surrounded by successful, highly educated people, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. The conversation was sharp, witty, and flawlessly reasoned, yet it felt entirely devoid of a pulse. We were exchanging resumes of our intellect, terrified to reveal a single belief that could not be backed by peer-reviewed data or a watertight moral framework. We have become a society of ghosts haunting our own machines. When you feel a sudden, irrational urge to quit the job that looks perfect on paper, what happens? Your mind, conditioned by this Socratic sickness, instantly builds a cage of pros and cons, trapping your instinct in a spreadsheet of risk management until the urge quietly dies. When you fall in love with someone who makes absolutely no sense for your life plan, you panic desperately, trying to rationalize the magic out of the connection so it feels safe. We are exhausted because we are playing an unwinnable game. The intellect was never meant to be the master of the human house. It was meant to be a tool, a servant to our deeper drives. By elevating reason to the throne, we have created an internal bureaucracy so labyrinthine that a single genuine impulse must pass through a dozen checkpoints of logic, morality, and social acceptability before it is allowed to see the light of day. By the time it finally emerges, it is a pale, lifeless shadow of its former self. We are bleeding out our vitality into the void of the internet, writing 1,000-word essays in comment sections to defend our egos, mistaking the winning of an argument for the living of a life. We have forgotten how to act from the gut. We have forgotten that nature does not apologize, the ocean does not justify its tides, and a wolf does not construct a logical premise before it bares its teeth. Yet recognizing this modern tragedy is only the first step out of the abyss. The true salvation lies not in another intellectual formula, but in a brutal reclamation of our deepest, most suppressed drives. If logic is the sickness, what is the cure? Nietzsche offers us a remedy that is not for the faint of heart. It requires stepping out from behind the protective shield of our cleverness and standing naked in the roaring wind of reality. It requires embracing the will to power. For years, I fundamentally misunderstood this concept, filtering it through the paranoid lens of modern morality. I thought it meant the desire to dominate others, to become a tyrant. But that is the interpretation of a frightened mind. The will to power is an internal sunrise. It is the raw, fundamental drive of all living things to grow, to expand, to overcome obstacles, and to assert their own unique existence upon the canvas of the world. It is the roaring yes to life that precedes any thought. To heal our exhaustion, we must learn to trust the profound wisdom of the body over the frantic chatter of the dialectic. Your body knows what it desires before your mind has the chance to invent a reason to fear it. Nietzsche implored us to listen to our instincts, to honor the irrational Dionysian fires that burn within us. I had to learn through agonizing trial and error to allow myself to say, I want this simply because I want it, without attaching a pathetic bibliography of justifications. Do you understand how terrifying and entirely liberating that is, to look the world in the eye and refuse to explain yourself? This is the resurrection of the noble spirit. The noble soul does not measure itself against the judgments of the herd. It establishes its own values. When you are deeply immersed in the act of creation, whether you are painting a canvas building, a business lifting weights, or loving fiercely, you are not reasoning. You are flowing. You are acting from a place of pure, unadulterated power that transcends the fragile architecture of logic. The intellect is an incredibly useful compass, but it is a terrible engine. We must put reason back in its rightful place as a servant to the grand, chaotic, magnificent will of our deepest selves. We must shatter the illusion that we need a comprehensive theory of the universe just to justify taking a step forward. Let the scholars debate the mechanics of the wind. We must build our ships and sail. When you finally stop apologizing for the fire in your veins, a strange and magnificent transformation occurs in how you view the entirety of your existence. This journey through the demolition of pure reason leads us to the ultimate crowning realization of human freedom, amor fati, the love of one's fate. When you abandon the desperate need for life to make logical sense, You stop demanding that the universe conform to your neat intellectual expectations. Life is not fair. It is not a mathematical equation where good inputs guarantee good outputs. It is a beautiful, terrifying, absurd, and chaotic masterpiece. For so long, my reliance on rationality was just a coping mechanism for my fear of this chaos. I thought if I could understand everything, nothing could hurt me. But the armor of logic does not protect you from the pain of existence. It only isolates you from the joy of it. To practice Amor Fati is to look at the entirety of your life, the triumphs, the crushing failures, the moments of profound irrationality, the heartbreak and the ecstasy, and to embrace all of it without a single plea for it to have been different. It is to recognize that your scars do not need a philosophical justification. They are simply the markers of a life truly lived. We must become the artists of our own lives, shaping our reality, not with the cold, sterile instruments of a scientist, but with the bold, sweeping brush strokes of a creator who is unafraid of the dark colors. We must reclaim our right to be beautifully inconsistent, to change our minds, to act on wild intuition, and to be swept away by passions that cannot be neatly categorized. My friends, the exhaustion you feel in your bones is the rebellion of your own soul against a cage made of words. You do not owe the world a flawless argument for your existence. You do not owe the jury of the internet, your colleagues, or even your family a meticulously rationalized defense of your deepest desires. You are not a thesis waiting to be defended. You are a force of nature waiting to be unleashed. Step away from the debate podium. Walk out of the sterile corridors of overthinking. Breathe in the messy, irrational, breathtaking air of the real world. Let them call you illogical. Let them call you unreasonable. Smile at them and walk into the wild, roaring fire of your own authentic life. Thank you for walking this dark and difficult path with me today. Remember, the mind is a wonderful servant, but a tyrannical master. Until we meet again in the depths of our shared philosophy, do not be afraid to let your instincts howl. In the end, the philosophical journey we have taken today is a radical call to awaken from the slumber of over-intellectualization. For centuries, we have been trapped in a Socratic paradigm that elevates cold reason above the vibrant, chaotic pulse of life itself. We've been conditioned to suppress our deepest instincts, endlessly justifying our existence before the unforgiving tribunal of logic. This obsession with rationality has built a modern world that is technologically brilliant but spiritually bankrupt, leaving us exhausted, paralyzed by overthinking, and disconnected from our true nature. However, the antidote to this modern sickness lies in reclaiming our vital energy, the will to power. It is the courage to stop treating the intellect as the master and return it to its rightful place as a servant to our deepest drives. By embracing Amor Fati, we learn to love our fate in all its messy, unexplainable glory, free from the need to rationalize every scar and every triumph. We must tear down the internal bureaucracies that stifle our passions and dare to live intuitively, passionately, and unapologetically. You are not a mathematical equation to be solved. You are a living, breathing work of art. It is time to shatter the cage of extreme rationality, step out into the untamed wilderness of your own existence, and let your instincts guide you toward a life of profound, unfiltered power. The profound lesson and practical application. The deepest lesson to draw from this is that over-rationalizing your life is a hidden form of fear, a shield used to avoid the unpredictable intensity of true living. When we demand a logical justification for every emotion, desire, or decision, we strip life of its magic vitality and forward momentum. How to apply this today? Start practicing the art of unapologetic action. The next time you feel a genuine gut-level pull toward a decision, whether it is taking up a new hobby, ending a draining obligation, or expressing love, catch yourself before you build a mental spreadsheet of pros and cons. Give yourself permission to say, I am doing this simply because I want to. Stop over-explaining your personal choices to others. Reconnect with your physical body through movement, creation, or nature, and allow those visceral experiences to silence your mental chatter. Learn to trust the primal wisdom of your intuition over the anxiety of your intellect. Join the conversation. What is one thing you have deeply wanted to do but held yourself back from because it didn't seem logical or practical? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. I would love to read your perspective, and sharing your experience helps create a space for everyone to learn and find courage in each other's stories. If you found value in today's philosophical journey, please hit the subscribe button to support the channel. Your subscription provides the motivation needed to continue diving deep into these ideas and bringing you more thought-provoking content in the future.